Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I'm going to be looking at Fedora Silverblue 35 right after this. I had a couple of comments on the last time I talked about Fedora Silverblue, and so I'm going to try to address those. Uh, Fedora, what is it? What does it do? How do I install it? And finally, why would you want it? What's in it for you, right? So let's talk about that. First of all, Fedora Silverblue is based on the same release as Fedora Workstation 35. It has the same core, the same kernel, the same types of packages are available for it. But there is a big difference in the way it works. Fedora Silverblue's root file system is immutable, meaning that it's read-only. So your root, your user, and everything below, you cannot modify it. So also, everything like your home directories and your user local, all of that has been moved to var. So anything that needs to be written is sticking. It's been moved inside the var directory. So yeah, they're all symlinked, and that includes ops, server, mount, temp. All of them are there. So if you have file systems that you're attempting to mount, you can no longer mount them off a root. You have to mount them off of var. Silverblue also does not support dual booting, nor does it support manual partitioning. Now, you can do some manual partitioning, but you have to leave most of the immutable stuff alone, because if you mess with that, it will not install and it won't work. So one of its features is OS-Tree. OS-Tree, that's a core technology that's used to compose, deploy, and update Silverblue. OS-Tree operates a little bit like a version control system in that I have the ability to create versions of my base system and then use that version to back up and to restore to a known state should something go wrong. So rpm-ostree, on the other hand, builds on top of OS-Tree, and it adds the capability to install RPM packages on top of an OS-Tree image. So Silverblue is an OS-Tree image, and rpm-ostree allows me to add additional packages to it. So as you can see here from the diagram, that the daemon actually has the OS-Tree image system and the libdnf image system. Some of its features are that it's transactional. You can background the image-based upgrades, so you don't have to do those in the foreground. You can let those happen whenever. OS rollback without impacting user data. So I can go back to a different version of the system and it won't impact any of the data that's in my var home directory or any of the mutable directories. The client-side package layering is really the thing that is key, and that's provided by OS-Tree. We're going to talk more about that. But so you can make your own derivatives, basically. OS-Tree is not a Red Hat initiative. It's an independent project. So it is not, and it's also independent of the distributions. OS-Tree is the underlying update mechanism for Fedora Core OS as well. So you have not only Fedora Silverblue being based on this, but you also have a server component called, the Fedora Core OS as well. That's going to support that. But the use of packages is, I wouldn't call it discouraged, but it's really not the sole purpose of Silverblue. The developers of Silverblue would expect you to use either Flatpaks, Toolboxes, or the rpm-ostree in order to install apps and packages. So how does this work? Flatpak app is the primary way of getting GUI applications installed on Silverblue. That's the preferred method to do it. Toolbox is used to install CLI applications, that is command line, the command line interface and that would be typically would be used for development or debugging tools, that sort of thing. rpm-ostree layering is used for host updates. So if I need updates to the base operating system in order to keep it secure, fix bugs and stuff and so forth, then our rpm tree is really meant for that. Package layering is what ostree really provides us. So it works by modifying your Silverblue installation, and it extends the packages from which Silverblue is composed. So I have a base set of packages, a kernel, libraries, and so forth that make up Silverblue. And the package layering allows me to modify and extend that. But most, but not all RPM packages supplied by Fedora can be installed on Silverblue. So there are some exceptions where certain RPM packages just won't work. The package layering creates a new bootable file system, and that file system, of course, is your root file system, but it will not affect your current root. So, what the heck are you talking about? Well, remember the root file system is immutable. So what they do is they layer any changes on top of that. So I leave my base layer alone, and I make my changes in the next layer up. And then I boot into that particular layer, and then if I want to roll back, I can simply select this one below it, and this one gets discarded. So yeah, so you can do that, and that allows me to roll back, and it keeps me in sort of a transactional model for my packages. The package layer also means that you have to reboot when updating or installing new packages, and that's because you're not actually running on this new layer yet until you reboot into it. So, and that's the reason for that. You aren't able to just switch into this. Now, there is an experimental feature that allows for a live update. So in other words, once I'm finished building this new layer, I can then execute a command called rpm-ostree, and it's execute apply live, and that will then switch this one into my current distribution path. So I can switch the deployment to a new root without a reboot. It's an experimental feature. They don't really expect you to use that very much. It's there for testing purposes and to be able to get things in quickly without having an intervening reboot. But it isn't meant to be used daily. So be warned about that. What about installing new packages? If I want to install a new package, I just use the rpm-ostree command. And that command is install, and then I put in the package name. That package name is exactly the same as the DNF package name. There are methods to replace and remove packages. So, for example, I get notification that there's a new library or there's a new package version out that I'm currently running, but I don't want to risk taking out my system by applying that package. So I want to be able to test it, but I want to get rid of it and just return to my old environment very quickly. So there are commands strictly for that. So you can just go to test it, and then when you're done, you can pop it back off and remove that one. If you want more information about that, the Silverblue documentation that's on the Fedora documentation website, and I'll put a link in the description of this video to help you find that. So that'll explain more about it. There's a lot of documentation on rpm-ostree, so if you're interested in some of the technical details, you can go there and find out more. Toolbox is a container management system. It's the wrapper on the outside of it. So that one is actually using Builda and Podman in order to create containers, a container system for you as an individual user. So this is meant to provide you with containers so that you can build environments that contain development tools, so libraries and so forth. Let's say that you're working on two projects, and the needs are different. So you might have different versions of the same library. You might have a complete buildup of a set of tools for one package and maybe just a minimal buildup for another. So Toolbox allows you to do that. I can maintain multiple projects in the same vein, or I can use it for any kind of CLI work that I'm doing. That maybe I'm building up benchmarks and I want to have a benchmark set aside on the system, and it's built up under the container for that. So you can create new containers, and then it'll ask you for the base image to download, and then the default, of course, is Fedora 35. But then you can enter it, and then you can execute basically as if you had logged into the container. And then there's Toolbox Run, which allows you to execute commands inside the container, but you don't actually switch into that container as your environment. One of the other things about Toolbox is that your home directory actually is a part of that container. So anything that's in your home directory on the main Silverblue volume is also present in the container. Any changes you make while in the container to your home environment are reflected out in your existing environment or as well. So it's a little bit different than Docker. So yeah, there's more commands. You can, of course, remove containers and all that stuff as well. So again, same documentation, you'll find more information about that. Flatpaks, why do we have them? What was the idea behind them and why? So the problem that we've had in the past is, you've probably heard me talk about this before, is the issue of I write an application, I go to install it on your machine, and it doesn't work. But then I tell you, and then you go, oh, didn't you test this? And I would say, well, yeah, it works fine on my machine. The famous WOM method, or works on my machine. So yeah, it's really meant to give me an environment that I can repeat over and over again what I was using to develop something with, and that you would be seeing the exact same duplicate of my environment without having any errors caused. The other thing it allows me to do is it allows me to ease that distribution of applications that are developed to different distributions. I mean, they all have different versions of the libraries, they all have different versions of the kernel. And so trying to port packages between them gets to be a nightmare. I mean, I release one set of versions for this distribution, I release another set of package versions for this one, and then I end up having to maintain all this stuff. But if I develop a Flatpak, I can install whatever version I'm working on, and that remains independent of the system that it's hosted on. So that's one of the main reasons behind Flatpak. But the other thing is it allows for different common libraries to be supported without contaminating the main base operating system environment. So I can bring in glibc libraries that are versioned, maybe they're brand new and the one on my system isn't because of the particular release that I'm on. So it allows me to run stuff like that without, destroying my environment in the process of trying to test something. Also, it's a way to future-proof. So again, if developing applications on an older set of versions of the kernel or whatever, or on different versions of libraries that are older than what is currently available on my base OS, it allows those applications to continue to run without having to go in and update and do a compile on them. So Flatpak also is developed by an independent community. I've heard some people say it's a Red Hat initiative. Well, Red Hat started it, yes, but they do not control it. It's maintained by an independent community of developers. The reason for that was they're trying to prevent a single vendor lock-in, which is, I think, your concerns as well. You don't want to join something that is going to, keep you married to a Red Hat release or a Fedora release. And because of that independence, Flatpaks are supported by over 29 Linux distributions, only only three of which are owned and controlled by Red Hat. So, I mean, I'm not defending them. I'm not saying this is the best thing since sliced bread. Not at all. There is nothing perfect in this world, and we're human, and warts should show up in any software package that's written. a big mystery why and how that happened. So the requirements for Fedora Silverblue are exactly the same as they are for Fedora 35. You need a 2 gigahertz dual core CPU as a minimum, 2 gig of memory, although I think you will find that very limiting on Silverblue. In my experience, just running a few benchmarks on it, 4 gig was a real issue. So I mean, it was running out of memory very quickly. 15 gig of unallocated disk space, 800 by 600 screen resolution. The recommended requirements are a 2 gigahertz quad core CPU, 4 gig of memory, although as I said, I think that's probably optimistic. 20 gig of unallocated disk space and a screen size of 1024 by 768. Graphics hardware, same, Intel GMA 9XX or higher, also NVIDIA NV30 or higher, and Radeon R300 or higher. Those are fairly old graphics boards, so yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be an issue supporting anything going forward. An NV30, the last time I saw one of those was it's probably about 10 years ago. So all this containerization, does that remove the need for a distribution? I mean, do I need to have distributions anymore? So a lot of people think so. A lot of people have been talking about that and saying that the need for a distribution is absolutely obsolete now that we have containers. But so the container trends, there's really two different trends that are going on. First one is I take and I build up my containers and I use a base image that's supplied by a third party or by the originator of the software. For example, Nextcloud has a container image of their system, so does OwnCloud. There are a number of systems like that where you can just get the container version, install it, and you're done. You're up and running. The other one is to build from scratch. So take Nextcloud, for example, again. I could build up my container environment using the install scripts that they provide to bring in the environment, configure it, set it up inside the container, and then I have my own. There is some good reasons behind that, and we'll talk about those. So, as far as the Linux distributions no longer will matter because of containers, I personally think that that's more of a follow the shiny object than reality. I mean, there are some things you can run in a container, and there are some things you cannot. There's trade-offs anywhere in engineering, and you have to look at the advantages and disadvantages of either before you can say, oh, I can always do this, and this is going to replace my Fedora distribution or my Debian distribution or my Ubuntu or my Arch distribution. So, yeah, I mean, so as I said, though, anytime you come up with something new, a new design, a new way of thinking about it, a new way to solve a problem, you're going to create a new problem right along with it. And in fact, the container management systems create problems as well. That's what we're all about in engineering. We fix one and break two. I mean, that's the way it is. You'd almost think it was intentional. Nah, we wouldn't do that intentional, would we? So if you look at container management overall, what is the problem then we're really trying to solve with this? So I guess the first thing you have to think about is what do you do when there's a new version of the kernel? Because your distro is tested on a particular release of the kernel, and all of the surrounding pieces and packages, bits and pieces that are assembled are all built around that kernel. So you could very well run into a situation where you blow yourself out of the water, install a new kernel, and now all of a sudden my system doesn't work anymore, or at least maybe it doesn't work correctly in certain areas. The other problem that you have is that there are literally there's over 60-some thousand packages that you can choose from to bring into a release. And more than likely, you've already got several thousand of them installed. Now, maybe it's only 1,500, maybe it's only 1,600 packages, but so what? Those things you have to deal with. You're going to have to bring all that stuff in, compile it probably, and to get it running underneath of a new distribution. Now, I'm not talking about I'm not talking about once I have Debian up and I have my package libraries built. I'm talking about what if you went out and built your own distribution from scratch? You'd have to do all of that yourself. All that work you'd have to do yourself. That's why so many people, when they're doing new distributions, they base it off of somebody else's work. So yeah, and if you're bringing in packages that are going to have to be assembled and compiled, that's going to require some expertise about that particular package. You need to know what it is you need to configure. You need to know what it is you need, what users you got to have, and then what rights those users have, what locations is your workings file stored in, and all that stuff that goes with it. So yeah, it's more than just doing the 3 commands, configure, make, install, and you're done. You're talking, yeah, you could maybe get away with that with some packages, but other packages are going to require you to sit down and configure. And some of them are going to require, like I said, specific configurations just to get them up and running. So if you want a usable system with the ability to try out software, and you're on a system and you didn't build it on a container, you will, I guarantee it, you will contaminate your system and you will have issues. You will break things, you'll find things won't work. And then, yeah, it'll behave in ways that you just you certainly didn't expect. And the other thing, you're going to have to learn to compile in order to use it. I mean, that's what distro maintainers do. They have to learn how to bring all this stuff together and make it work. I'm talking about the ones, of course, that are building from the ground up. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that are going over to Arch and grabbing their repos and coming up with a new distribution on their own. So, I mean, some of that legwork is saved because other people are working on that for you. So, and having all this stuff happen and contaminating my system, that's not the future of computing. That's not the direction I would want to see this go. I mean, that gets to be a mess. Right now, as we're speaking, there is that exact thing that's happening in Windows right now. So if you go out and buy an Alder Lake CPU from Intel right now, you will find, even if it's an AMD processor that you buy, you're going to find on Windows 10 and 11, first, there's performance differences. And you're going to go, why? Well, what's going on here? And the same is going to happen to you on Alder Lake between Windows 10 and 11. And that's because no one has bothered to bring all those changes back down into Windows 10. And in some cases, Windows 11 breaks some things that were working in Windows 10. So, and you're going to find, I'm just using an example, I'm not picking on Windows. So you'll find that same thing happening in Linux as well. So, because it's all software. So how do containers help us? I mean, in our daily lives, and what good is this to me, right? So you could take and download a base image and then you could just run from it. The advantage there is that you load a base image container and you have everything you need in order for you to accomplish whatever task that base image container was touted for. So it may be just development tools and debugging tools that you're looking for, and all of those will be there. If you're looking for like Nextcloud, again, same thing. You download the base image for Nextcloud and everything is there. You can come up. All you need to do is start the service and then go and configure it from the HTML interface. So yeah, and when you're all finished with it and you're done with it, maybe you just tested it for a while. It turns out you didn't like it, so you want to get rid of it. Well, just delete the container and it's off your system. It's gone. You didn't have to go out and find every library and all of the dependencies on that library that got installed with it that clobbered your existing versions of those libraries. So yeah, I mean, that's the whole advantage. The disadvantage, however, is that base image builds, surprise, are not perfect. So I say this because the first thing that you'll notice about base images is they're always larger than if you were to do the scratch build yourself inside of a container. So yeah, I mean, this is container to container comparison now. I'm not talking about installing this on your base OS. I'm talking about if you were to build this yourself, you can build it tighter and smaller than those systems can because they make assumptions about how it's being used. So, and whereas you can tailor it exactly to what you need. So what about building it? What about building the container images from scratch? So the advantages, like I said, they're really small, and they include only what you need for your base image, and then you can bring in whatever packages in addition to that you want. So you can customize the heck out of it, get that container exactly to what you need, and you're done. So the other advantage is that you gain access to the latest and greatest package versions of the software pieces that are placed together. And of course, that also means you'll have access to the latest bugs as well. Such a pessimist I am, huh? But that's the truth. I mean, that is the truth. The disadvantage is there's a cost of controlling everything, and that's your time. So time is money, and that's how things equate out. I mean, it's not someone else that's going to be up till 2 a.m. trying to get this thing working. It's you that's going to be up at 2 a.m. trying to get this thing working. So, yeah, I mean, there are times when build it yourself makes sense, however. If you're in environments that you're developing C or Rust or Golang applications, for example, those create, especially in large projects, those create huge compile events. And that is always an advantage to having a container because you have no idea those packages that even are made up of the compiler and the support libraries for the compilers could easily taint your system that's out in your root directory. So yeah, I mean, though, if you're doing that kind of development, you'd probably want to move over to a build from scratch. Um, However, if you want a career in installing, configuring, debugging, rinse and repeat, build it yourself because, yeah, it's all going to fall on you to get everything working. If, on the other hand, you'd prefer to let someone else do some of that heavy lifting for you, then, yeah, then you would go and build from the base images. Linux, however, that's one of the things that we all love about Linux is that it gives us access to tons of software for each project. I don't have to be satisfied with GNOME 40 or GNOME 41 or KDE or Kdenlive or any of those kinds of tools. I can have access to a lot of tools that allow me to do my work. So if something, now I'm not talking about bugs, I'm just talking about we all work differently. We all think differently and on how our software should work. What you think is easy may not be easy for me. What I might think is easy won't be easy for you. It's just that we don't think about things exactly the same way. So, like for example, if I need a transportation, I go and buy a car. Do I want to assemble it before I'm able to use it? I mean, that's the question, right? Do I want to be the one that assembles it? No. I just want to get in and take the keys and start moving from place to place using the car to get me there. That's the same is true of applications. A lot of times I'm not interested in assembling them or building them myself. All I want to do is utilize them to edit a video or add audio to a sound stream. So yeah, I mean, that's the way and Linux for me is no different in that aspect. So that's the whole reason behind containers and what they do for us. They allow us to switch things up, bring things in, get it working quickly with images that someone else built that I don't have to guess what libraries they used because not all these guys, well, yeah, very few developers tell you what the actual base libraries are that make up your system. How do you find out? When you compile. It'll tell you, say, well, you're missing this, or this is undeclared, and you go, well, where is that library? Well, then you have to go scratch your head unless the developer took the time to actually map out this is the definitive list of supporting application and dependencies that I need in order for this to run. Very rare, by the way. So that's why there's Silverblue. Silverblue gives you a choice between build it yourself or take the base image and start using it. I mean, if you look at even now you might think I'm just talking about Toolbox. I'm not. I'm talking about Flatpaks as well because Flatpaks are essentially a container. So yeah, they contain everything you need in order to run that application. One thing I never liked was spending my time was spending my time trying to find a different C header. I mean, this happens all the time when you're moving between distros. Some developer will take a standard C header definition, which is part of the C compiler. They'll take something and they'll modify it just for the heck of it because they wanted to. And so when you go and you start up and you start developing and you find, oops, this has been renamed. So you start getting syntax errors and you go, what in the world is going on here? So yeah, I mean, I don't enjoy those kind of moments. I mean, that's not fun for me. Might be cool for them, but it certainly isn't fun for me. So that's what Silverblue is about. It's the ability to build up the environment the way you want it, be able to test different things when you want it, and be able to roll back. Not only because you're done testing something, but also if something breaks. So if I upgrade my system and all of a sudden my application breaks, and I don't know how many times when I was running Blackmagic capture drivers inside of Fedora, I don't know how many times that would happen when Fedora released a new kernel. For some reason, Blackmagic ties their builds to a specific kernel. So if you don't have their version that supports that particular kernel, it won't compile. But anyway, yeah, it's not independent. They don't build up their stuff independently of the kernel versions. And I don't know why. They just don't. They may have, I'm sure they have, like I said, many times, they may have their reasons for that. But anyway, why don't we go take a look at a demo of installing it. Let's go kick the tires on it, and then I can show you some of these features we've been yammering on about. So give me a moment to do that, and I'll be back. Okay, so I have gone ahead and created a virtual machine that has 8 gig of memory and 4 cores, 32 gig of disk space. And so that's what we're going to be running. I am going to be using Silverblue Kinoite today. And Kinoite is a mineral, and it's kind of a bluish color mineral, and that's what Silverblue named the version of their Silverblue distribution that supports KDE as the default desktop environment. So yeah, that's the one I'm going to be testing. I'm not a KDE user, so lower your expectations. Okay. But I wanted to do this one because it is new and wanted to see what it looked like and if it followed the same rules as the GNOME version of Silverblue. This is the only other version of Silverblue that there is currently that uses a desktop environment that's different than the base one. So, okay. So, yeah, so this is pretty similar to what it was with the net installer. So I've got my keyboard, my language, and my date and time. It's figured. I mean, I named this. I did that one, and the rest of it did. So then I can pick what options I want to install. Now, remember, you don't want to be messing with this. There are some things you can do. I mean, you can do some partitioning, but yeah, I would recommend, if this is your first time with Silverblue, no, don't mess with it. Get a chance to learn it first, and yeah, because if you do mess it up, oh, I didn't select it right. Oh, I didn't because I clicked off of it. All right, let's try it again. Okay, same thing here. If I want root to be active or allowed to log in, I can do that, but I don't. So we'll go ahead. Set up my user as I always do. This keyboard seems to have a problem once in a while. It seems to skip a beat. Okay, so we're ready to go. It is 15:10, so 3:10 right now. And I'll pause here and we'll pick up when it's finished. Okay, so it's taken about 5 minutes or so, maybe 4 or 5 minutes to do this one. A little bit faster than the base workstation install for Fedora, but I was using the network version, which is going to, it has to go and get all the latest versions from the external repos, whereas this one is going locally, so it's going to be a little faster. All right, let's bring it up. This is KDE, in case you missed that. I saw this error before. It's not, apparently not a big one, because I could just finish. Oh, that's what I forgot to do. My error. I forgot to finish the config. All right, so I told you I'm not a KDE user. We'll struggle through it. It's not that hard. It's not that hard of a system to use. Okay, so let me, first of all, get the screen a little bit nicer. Let's go to a dark theme and apply. And then we'll go down and find display, which is right there. One of the things I've noticed with this is that after a reboot, it randomly decides to pick something different other than what I'm running. So I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try to run 1400 by 900, and we'll see what we get. Okay, that looks good. So that's at least working. There's some other information you might be interested in looking at here. So there's the system information. Tells me what version of Plasma I'm running, 5.22.5. And this is 5.85.0 for the framework, and then the Qt version is 5.15.2. That does, now see, now they show you the kernel, 5.14.10-300. There is a patch, so this is not patched. And I think that was a critical patch that came out yesterday. So we will make sure that we do our software updates then, and of course the tool can do those here for us. But I want to show you the command line because there's a couple of important things to show you with rpm-ostree that I want to be able to show in the command line. So yeah, it's yeah, you know me, I like the command line. It's just the way I am. But there's just some things that I can show you that are a lot easier to work around. So it looks like we have Dolphin, which yuck. Okay, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of Dolphin. Let's see. Let's do, first of all, and we'll get a list of commands that you can run. As you can see, you can compose a tree of your own. You can clean up. DB allows me to query what is installed and what packages are pending to be installed, so you can use it for that. I can deploy a specific commit. So if I've got a bunch of commits that are out there that are older, I can redeploy one and then roll back to one. Status where I'm at. I can upgrade the system now, and I can install packages. Now you'll notice this is one of my complaints with rpm-ostree. No search. There's no search. There's still no search. I would like to see a search. I don't know if this is meaningless, but we'll try it. So my sys root is right here, and it's taking 4.5 gig. Now that's not a complete story here because you also have boot, which is 84 meg. HTOP probably isn't here, I guess. Top is probably here. About 671 megabyte of memory, it's right here, is in use. So that's way, 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 way less than it was yesterday with GNOME. The other thing is we already know that the kernel is version 10, and I know that there's already a patch for that was critical. So why don't let's do a couple things. Let's do rpm-ostree, and we'll do an update. It's upgrade. I know my Debian's showing. My Debian is showing. Okay. So the first thing I want to do here is an rpm-ostree status. And I'll show you a couple things. You'll notice that I have two entries here. This one is this is the latest entry on top, and this is the current. How do I know it's current? It has a white dot next to it, and this is older than this one. There's also a version number, so you can see this is 35.2, this is 35.1. That's an internal version number that's used to track. That's why we call it a version control system, is because there is a version. It creates a commit ID, and there's a signature, and that kind of tells you a little bit about what the difference is. There's 318 upgraded packages and one added. And then down here is my base. Now I can add on to this. It won't, if I run rpm-ostree again and do an install of some packages. I don't know if this is the recommended way of doing things. I'm just testing this. So all right, let's do a get. Let's do a neofetch. Let's do a glances. And we'll get all that stuff done. And you'll notice it's doing a checkout. So yeah, again, you'll see language that's similar to version control. I'm just going to let it run out because I want you to feel what the performance is like. Now this is on a Core i7, and it is a 10th gen CPU, a mobile version, because it is running on a NUC. The reason I run on a NUC is I care more about power than I care about speed. I could go out and buy an old server and install it, but then I would have a slow system that was consuming more power. So I'd rather have it the other way. A slow system that consumes less power. So yeah. Okay. So let's run the status command again. Now, if you're thinking you're going to see two, you won't. It will merge those in, and you'll see there's the original line, and then there's the layered packages on top. So it tells you everything you need to know, but you don't have the ability to actually switch into that version. For example, if I were to type htop right now, it's going to say it's not found, and it's not found because I'm running in this environment right here. And where I need to get my new packages are up here, so I need to reboot. So let's do that. And we'll do that. And they recommend that you use system control to reboot the system, not just a straight reboot command. Although I have done that in the past, it doesn't seem to matter. Although again, I don't know if they're recommended one way, I would use their way rather than assume that reboot is going to commit everything out to disk, because it may not. Okay, so like I said, now I don't think it's going to, well, it did make a liar out of me. Let's see if it stays. Yeah, it did. It retained it. Okay, so let's go back to the command line and look at this again. Let's see what we got. Oh, might have to tell it what command I like. They haven't gotten to that psychic version of the system that I want. So you notice that my white dot moved from here up to here. So this is now my current version. So I should have htop available to me, and it is. 679 meg of memory is in use. I can run neofetch. And I also notice I'm on version 15 now. So yeah, there was an update to the kernel. And then 1,562 packages. I believe that number, of course, has gone up because of the packages I just added, and the update probably as well. So Let's see what Flatpaks we have. Just the Fedora platform is all we have running. Um, so I don't now. Let's go out and I want to run. Let's finish this up first before we get too far down the road. So Glances is showing 953 meg. That's what the app cache is. And let's check the CPUs. They're pretty much idle. There's not a lot of background activity that's going on. And memory is about 12% used for this. I have 8 gig I have allocated. Okay. I think that's it. Now, I think, get Linus installed. Let's try it. I have been able to get it installed in previous versions, but I have to put it in my home directory. Nope, didn't specify clone, did I? Didn't give it a verb. Now I'm sure that, I mean, this is okay because this is using a Git repository to bring down the software, but okay, wait, let's just, I think I'm going to have a problem here. I think it's going to complain because I'm not running it. I don't have it owned by root. Yep. But it'll run anyway. That's good. And let me fix it. Get the -R in there. Okay. Okay. Now it didn't complain anymore. All right, let's just run through it and see what we get. What I started to say was in the previous versions of Silverblue, in order to install the Flatpaks, you had to go out and actually configure the system to use the Flatpak hub, the Flat Hub. So I'm going to check and see if that works, and see if any additional applications come up in the Flatpaks, because it didn't seem like I had a lot of choices in the software manager that I had before under GNOME. So 63 is the score. So that means I've probably got 2 warnings. grpat binary found errors in one or more of the, so we've got some problems with group files, and we've got some problems with, of course, the firewall. That's normal. I'm just going to peek through here. I'll probably find an Apache server on that. Yeah, that's fine. All that stuff is fine. I don't see an Apache server. So, okay, so they don't stand anything up. Now, first thing, can I run DNF? No. Can I run Yum? No. Not there. So, what do you do? Well, the easiest way, if it's a command line, is to run Toolbox. Now, if I just put this in by itself, it's going to say, oh, you want me to run the latest copy. So this is a little bit like Docker. So it's going to say, oh, you want me to go out and pick whichever. I mean, if there's only one container, it's going to run that by default. If there are 2 containers, it doesn't know. So it's going to ask you to give it use the name to run it. But in my case, there's nothing here yet, so it's going to say, hey, you don't have one. Do you want me to create it? Yes. And then it's going to say, you want me to download the Fedora Toolbox 35, which is basically the Fedora server. So yeah, I do. So it's going to pull from the outside, and it's going to create my toolbox. So I've got it all created, and it also started running it. How do I know it's running it? There's a purple dot right there. So that means I'm inside the container. Now, if I do an ls, see Linus right here? That's in my home directory. So my home directory is the same. If I go out here, go back into the toolbox, there's test. And if I, inside the toolbox, oops, there's test too. So anything I do to the file system, either in or out of the toolbox, is going to affect my local directory. Now, that's only true of stuff that I put in my home directory. That is not true of making any changes to as far as the root file system under the toolbox. So, I mean, I can, once I'm in here, I can look and see these are the packages that are installed in this particular environment. So I could, let's see if htop is here. Probably not. No. So this, just to prove this is a different environment. Wow, that was nice. Okay, let's do that. Let's go ahead and put up htop. Just waiting. Yep. Go ahead and do it. So, all right. So now I didn't. Now you notice I didn't have to do anything to the OS tree. I didn't have to reboot or anything because this is working just like it does in any other environment. The as I had said when we were doing the initial look at, the kind of the purpose behind Silverblue, as you'll notice, the idea here is, as I said, you can create, if I need a project with 15 different libraries and a compiler, then I can create a project just for that and create a container just for that. If I have another project that I'm working on that requires a completely different set and versions of even the kernel, I can set that up as well. So yeah, and you'll see that that version of the Linux kernel is identified differently than it is on the outside. So this environment is totally contained. I don't think it is borrowing anything from the outside other than my home directory. So yeah. So we'll go ahead and exit out of here. And we'll see what we need to do to get a fully functioning Flatpak. All right, so let's go to Fedora Silverblue. Okay, there's the user guide. That's what I want. Getting started. There's the setup. Okay, let's go there. I think I can, well, let's see if that's just, no, that's the repo. Let's do this. I'll anticipate that it's going to need sudo, but Let's see what happens when I go into the Software Center. Get rid of that. Taking longer than it did the first time I read. Ah, that's better. Yeah, okay. So now I'm seeing more packages. So I may be eating crow here because I'm seeing, yeah, I'm seeing stuff. Let me look and see if the ones I need, and these are the ones that weren't showing up before. Okay. So I'm going to eat crow and say, yes, this might work in order for me to be able to run. So yeah, it is highly likely. The other one I need is a third party, and of course it's not going to be in here, and they don't have a Flatpak. But what applications? I guess the first thing is, how do I know this is a Flatpak and not an RPM? Okay, it tells you right there. It tells you. Oh, I keep hitting that. Come here. I want that one. Blender. Yeah, this definitely would work. I could make this work. Transmissions here. Now, transmission, to be fair, was on the other one too. So, was on the one without the formal install. So the bottom line is here, you do have to go out and do the FlatHub repo setup. And I guess probably the thing to do is let's see what this one is. Is this a FlatHub or a Flatpak, or is this a RPM? No, it's a flat. So let's go ahead and install it, and we'll just see what happens. So I think I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to put this over. I'll put it on a separate drive on my Debian system since it doesn't want a dual boot. I'm assuming that if I put it on its own drive, it'll be happy. It just doesn't want to see another operating system on the same drive, I think is the issue. Did we go to sleep? Are we running? Yeah, we're running. I see activity here. Okay, it's installed. Probably can't launch it from there. Skip. Let's bring it up. Now I have, well, it's probably not fair because GIMP has a dark background anyway. So, what version is this? The boot 2.10. It's pretty recent. I know there's a lot of people that don't like containers. They don't like the Flatpaks. They don't like the Snappaks, and they don't like app images. But if it is true that a lot of people are starting to think about distributionless Linux, then this is one pathway of getting there. So, I mean, Snap is another. So if I do, yeah, now it shows a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's adding the platform version and all that stuff. So it's because this is a GNOME application, it's putting in the support. Now, normally that would be a really bad thing to do under KDE. I mean, if you try to mix GNOME and KDE, Yeah, normally you'll run into issues. You'll run into bad things happening to you. So I guess the last thing I would need to know how to do in order to make this a daily driver would be to get the non-free, the NVIDIA driver installed and up and running. So I think that's all. I'm going to leave it there for today. Let me shut this down because I don't really need it. Keeps bouncing. My keyboard keeps bouncing. So that's kind of my take on Silverblue and trying to explain, what its purpose is. Originally, when I looked at this, I did not do the setup on the Flatpak hub, so I knew better. I just was curious if that was still a requirement, and it looked like there was some packages in there, and so I thought, well, whoa, this is all there is. There was only like a handful, but yeah, after installing it the right way, yeah, it probably will work for me as a daily driver. It has everything that I use on Linux on a daily basis. Now, whether or not I'm going to have to, I probably would use more of the Toolbox for my development environment and what I would be using for that, just so I can keep it separate from, standing up and messing with the production system. So, in review, Silverblue is immutable. It has a hybrid package manager called rpm-ostree, which handles both the ostree images and the RPM images. It uses Flatpak for its GUIs, for GUI application installs, and it uses Toolbox for its command line interface. GUI is graphical user interface, and CLI is command line interface. So that's what it does, and then it allows you to version control your system from the start, from when you first install it. It allows you to roll back to a known working version in the event you get into a situation where an upgrade breaks you, and that has happened on Fedora before, all too frequently, I'm sure. But that's its main purpose. Now, whether or not this can go to a distribution list, yeah, well, I think that might be a bridge too far. I mean, that's yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, no, I don't see that happening. But that's all I had for today. I hope you enjoyed this look at Silverblue. If you did, please like and subscribe. Hope to see you all again real soon, and bye for now.